Alright, what is going on guys? It is Benny, and today I have a video going over all of the top tips and tricks that you need to know to play Clash Royale like a pro. Now if you're trying to elevate your Clash Royale gameplay, or you're hard stuck, or just trying to be an absolute GOAT at this game, then this video is going to be for you, because these are all of the tips and tricks that pros use. Now if you do enjoy this video, I would love it if you guys could let me know and subscribe for more content like this, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it for you beautiful people. The first thing that you need to get good at if you want to play Clash Royale like a pro is you need to defend using the least amount of elixir possible, and I'm going to teach you guys exactly how to do that. You'll see here I use my Barb to defend just his little prince and his Goblin drill, okay? And I take a little bit of damage, and that's good because sometimes it makes sense to take a tiny bit of damage if you can defend with a positive elixir trade. Now on the flip side of making positive elixir trades when you're defending is to make sure that you don't over defend. One of the times I see people over defend the most is when they're playing against Hog Rider. Don't get me wrong, we are all guilty of this, especially when you don't have a great counter to a Hog Rider, you don't know what to play, and you just play everything you can in your hand to try to defend. But I'm here to tell you guys that over defending sometimes is just going to punish you more than anything else, because the elixir that you use to defend, you might have been able to take a hit or two and then use that for a counter push. The key to making this work is always structuring your defenses so that 1, you're not overspending, and 2, you can use your cards in a counter push. You'll see here I have the Hog Rider going in the counter push along with the Firecracker, and that makes a really complicated push for my opponent to defend, and I'm able to get a ton of damage. I actually got more damage than I took, and that sets me up for really good success going into this match. When I talk about structuring your defense so that you're keeping your defensive cards alive, what I mean is playing your ranged cards or important cards a little bit to the left or to the right of the tower, typically away and out of range of their push cards. And what that does is it keeps them alive and allows you to use them in a counter push so that you can deal a ton of damage and hopefully take their tower. When it comes down to it, the question that you need to be asking yourself is spending a little bit of extra elixir worth the couple hundred damage that I might take if I don't spend it? And sometimes the answer might be no, and that's okay, because you can use that elixir to then punish your opponent and go into the counter push as long as you defend properly. Okay, so right now you might be wondering, Benny, how do I know what to use to defend and when I'm over defending versus under defending? Because obviously we don't want to lose a tower because we thought we were going to under defend properly. There's two things that you need to look at when you're making sure that you aren't over defending. The first thing is going to be how much damage does a card do, and a really easy way to understand this is if a card is under 3 or 4 elixir, there's a really good chance that one hit from this card is not going to do an insane amount of damage. Typically those cards are the cards that you can let yourself get away with only taking one hit sometimes so that you can punish and get some really good damage. You'll see here I use my little prince to defend the barbarians, and then I'm also going to just let my little prince defend the electro wizard. Now electro wizard is 4 elixir, and I know it's not going to take my tower at full HP when I have my little prince there, so there's no point in playing something else. Now the other thing that you need to look at is how much HP does a card have. Now when I say that a 3 or 4 elixir card doesn't do a ton of damage in one hit, that doesn't mean I'm saying that you can just let a full HP one get on your tower. You need to be aware of how much HP they are, and typically my rule of thumb is if they are only going to get 1 or 2 shots, then I don't need to defend it, but anything more is probably worth defending. If you do need to play a counter, similar to how I played the little prince against the electro wizard because maybe the card is full HP, try to play your defensive card in a position that keeps it safe and alive as long as possible. You might be sitting here thinking to yourself, Benny, why would I not defend it if I have the counters to it and I'm playing a cheap deck? And you might be right. Sometimes it does make the most sense to defend a push and not take that damage, especially if it's going to be a chip damage type of game or you're playing a cycle deck. But that being said, sometimes it does make more sense to not use a ton of elixir on defense and use your cards to then counter push and get more damage. It really does come down to judgment, and I promise you the more you do this, the more you'll kind of get used to it and understand when you want to counter push versus when you want to just defend and not take that damage. Just to be clear, I'm not condoning letting them get a ton of damage or letting them take your tower. All that I'm saying is you don't always have to counter everything. I should probably mention that each interaction is dependent on the tower troop that you use. Obviously, if I'm running Cannoneer, it's more important for me to counter a Goblin gang than if I'm running something like Dagger Duchess. Another really important thing when you're defending is not to defend at the bridge, and this is something I see a ton of my clan members and friends do that's a massive mistake that's going to hold you back. When you're defending, you don't want to be playing your cards right at the bridge to defend. There's really no rush to defend in most scenarios. When you're defending at the bridge, you put yourself at an immediate disadvantage because you're defending from the weakest point and you give your opponent the opportunity to take out your defensive cards a lot easier with no support from your tower. Instead of defending right at the bridge, you want to gradually pull cards towards the middle so that your tower has more time to fire upon them and your defensive cards can defend and have more HP for your counter push. This ties really well into my next tip, which is going to be to stop being so over aggressive. You can see here that I'm already up on elixir on this guy and damage, and he plays this Royal Ghost for no real reason. It's really easy for me to counter, and I can use my Dagger Duchess to counter it, and already he's behind on elixir, but it doesn't stop here. You see, the next thing that happens is I play my Mortar, and he's already down in elixir, and so he uses a Royal Giant, which is a -2 elixir trade, and you'll see here I'm up by quite a bit of elixir. Now this wouldn't be an issue on its own, but you'll see here that when I defend the Royal Giant, he goes for a Knight in front of it, it made no sense. It was pointless, that was wasted elixir. And then he goes for a Void, and he's used his elixir way too aggressive, and I can punish him now, and you'll see here I get a ton of damage simply because he was being way too aggressive and letting me get the elixir advantage. Now don't get me wrong, there is a time and there is a place to being aggressive with your cards, but you shouldn't just be spamming cards and being over aggressive with cards that don't add a ton of offense. So just to summarize, don't be over aggressive because every card you play your opponent is going to have to defend, and if you're not able to counter their defensive cards to your push, you're going to lose the match simply because you're being too aggressive, especially when you already had it in the bag. Now really quickly, something else that does tie into not being too aggressive is don't just randomly play your win condition, especially at the start of the game. You'll see here my friend plays his win condition for one of the first cards he plays. The opponent plays P.E.K.K.A. and he's going to lose the match because of this, okay? And don't get me wrong, everybody likes to starting hand somebody sometimes. I mean, I don't condone it. But everybody likes to do it sometimes, but you're gonna get punished if you end up doing that. Another really important tip is that you need to know your opponent's cycle, and you need to know your opponent's cycle for a couple different reasons. First of all, you need to have the correct counters to be able to counter the cards that they play at the right times. So you'll see here I'm playing against Lava Hound, and I need to make sure that I have my Poison, my Little Prince, and my Bats every single time that he has that Lava Hound. I'm saving those cards until I need them. Now if you're in mid to lower ladder and you're looking to climb trophies, this is the most important tip out of the entire video that you can get good at, because I see a lot of players struggle against cards like Mega Knight or Wizard or Golem, and the reason why they struggle is because they don't save the right counters for when those cards come out. They just play all their cards as needed, and then they always play whatever's in their hand. They're not saving stuff or thinking ahead for that. This applies for something like Goblin Barrel, where if you know your opponent has a card like Goblin Barrel, you need to be saving your log or other spell every single time you know they have it in rotation. Another thing you should be keeping track of when you're watching your opponent's cycle is what spells they have and what spells they've used. If you're keeping track of your opponent's cycle and you know that they don't have a spell or a certain counter in hand, you can absolutely punish them and really load up with cards that they might have trouble defending. And honestly, you can get a win simply from just using this strategy to punish them. You'll see here, I saw him use his Zap, so I cycled really quickly, got my Skeleton Barrel, Goblin Gang, and everything, and loaded up that side. Now this even applies to a card like Void, which is super relevant in this meta right now. If you can predict when they're going to play their Void because you know their cycle, you can keep a card alive to get the win. If you find that you're having trouble keeping track of your opponent's cycle, then something I like to do is pick one card that I'm always going to watch for. So in this scenario, I'm going to never play my Poison until I see this Graveyard, and then every single time he plays the Graveyard, I'm going to play my Poison, and that's the one card that I'm going to watch for. And as you get better, you can start to do this with more cards. Watching your opponent's cycle ties into my very last tip, which is going to be know what your deck's one trick is and make sure that you take advantage of your deck's one trick. Your deck's one trick situation refers to the situation where you can capitalize off of your opponent's mistake and take their tower or even win the game. So you'll see here using Mortarbait, when they use their arrows, I'm able to put my minion horde in and take the tower instantly. Being able to one trick is so important. Every single deck has its own one trick situation. For example, in something like Graveyard, punishing an opponent who's been over aggressive and spent too much elixir on offense is going to be your one trick situation, because then you can punish them and take their tower. Finding your deck's one trick and taking advantage of it and getting used to using it as much as possible is all you need to do to start winning more matches and climbing higher in ladder. Alright guys, that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that these tips help you guys out, and if you did make it this far, leave a comment talking about which card is your least favorite. Maybe even add a little diss in there, but I am curious what your guys' least favorite cards are, and so maybe I can give you guys better tips going into the future. But I do really appreciate you guys, and honestly your support means everything to me. It makes doing these videos so much fun, and it's just, you guys are the best. You guys are honestly the best people ever in this world. But thank you so much for watching guys. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Peace out.